Thank you for being here. Thanks for taking some time out of an extremely busy Wednesday at the State House. My first question for you, can you just briefly introduce yourself? Tell us about your background and your experience.
Yeah, so I'm Destin Hall. I'm in the State House. I represent Caldwell County and a small portion of Watauga County. It's District 87. This is my fourth term in the State House, so I've been here for about 7 years or so now. In my other job back home, I'm a general practice lawyer in Lenoir. Born and raised in Caldwell County, where I live now. Went to public schools there. Went to App State for undergrad. Went to Wake Forest for law school, and then I practiced in Charlotte for a while before I went back home and started practicing there, and I've been there ever since.
Nice. And when did you start in the State House?
So I ran the 2016 primary for the first time, and so I was sworn in 2017. Time has flown by, but I've enjoyed it, and we've been able to do a lot of good things.
And since that time, you've become rules chair. So when did that happen, and how did that happen?
Well, so by circumstance, I ended up becoming the rules chair at the end of my second term, which is pretty quick relative to other chairs like that. The prior rules chair left the legislature, and so I had worked pretty closely with the prior rules office on rules issues and redistricting issues, and so when that vacancy came open, Speaker Moore appointed me as the rules chair.
Awesome. Yeah. And I guess for context, the rules committee is the last stop for a bill before it ends up going to the floor. So that makes you, in a lot of people's view, like the second most powerful member of the House. So how do you feel like this has prepared you for the office of Speaker?
Well, being the rules chair is in many ways like being the speaker on training wheels. Speaker Moore, of course, was the rules chair under Tom Tillis when he was the speaker before he went to the Senate. And now I'm, of course, serving as the rules chair for Speaker Moore. I handle a lot of the things that the speaker does on a day-to-day basis. Typically we're the first line here for the Speaker's office. We try to deal with just about every issue here, and if it's something that perhaps it's a disagreement between the two chambers, then it might get kicked over to the Speaker's office. But in this office we handle bill movement, so bills filed, we determine which committees they go to, we talk to our members, sort out where they need to go, then we decide, once they go through those committees, they come back to rules, and then we take another look at them. They often change as they go through that committee process, and then we decide which ones are heard in rules and which ones go to the floor and go on over to the Senate.
Since you've been here, what would you say is your most significant legislative accomplishment?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, if I had to pick one that I'm most proud of, and I've been blessed to be able to pass a lot of legislation in my time here, but it's probably one from my first term, which was the constitutional amendment for crime victims' rights. We had basically a toothless law in North Carolina for victims of crime. They didn't have the guaranteed rights to even be heard in court, and we made sure through a constitutional amendment that crime victims in our state now have to be heard in court. So DA's offices across the state now have to make sure they're trying to get those crime victims to come to court. If it's a guilty plea or whenever the person, if they go to trial and they're found guilty, the victim of those crimes, they get a chance to be heard if they want to be heard. They have that right now. And thankfully I was able to be a part of that as primary sponsor of that my first term, and we passed it here at the General Assembly, and then it went to the voters, of course, as all constitutional amendments do, and in 2018 passed overwhelmingly. And it's still in our Constitution today. And it was a big deal for a freshman legislator at that time for me to be able to work on a bill like that, but to also be a primary sponsor and sort of lead the charge on that issue. And I've focused on a lot of things dealing with crime victims' rights during my time at the General Assembly. There's a bill, Death by Distribution, which tries to crack down on these drug dealers who are selling drugs that are killing people. We're dealing with requiring sheriffs across our state to cooperate with ICE when they arrest somebody for a crime here in North Carolina who are also here illegal. We want to make sure they're communicating with federal government regarding ICE. So have focused on a lot of those criminal justice issues, making sure that we're protecting victims across our state.
Right. And as Speaker of the House, you'll undoubtedly need to work across the aisle at times, especially if Republicans don't always have supermajorities. So what is your plan to do that, and what would that look like for you?
Yeah, so as Rules Chair, you have to deal with members of both parties every day because you've got members from both sides who are filing bills, members from both sides who have amendments, and it's our job to go through those things to try to reach compromise when we can. There are a number of Democrats who I've gotten to know well over the course of my time here, and that's one of the unique aspects of this job. I get a chance to get to know a lot of the folks on the other side of the aisle, and in this day and age, with the self-sorting of partisans, not just in the legislatures but just in our country in general, you don't see as much of that anymore. But with what I do here, it sort of sets the stage to get to work with a lot of those folks. And from my perspective, I'm always going to follow conservative principles. I'm confident that we're going to stay in majorities. I've served in the majority and I've served in the supermajority. I like the supermajority a lot better. I think we're going to stay in the supermajority for the foreseeable future. But that doesn't mean that you don't try to be amicable with the folks who are on the other side, because at the end of the day, we're all here elected by the folks in North Carolina to pass legislation. And I think it's important to at least listen to the other side. Not always going to agree. We're going to stand by our principles, as I'm sure they would too on the other side. But I think it's important for us to listen to each other, not only at the General Assembly, but just in our country as a whole.
Right. And so North Carolina faces a number of different challenges, whether that's economic growth, infrastructure, education, healthcare. How do you plan to address some of these issues as Speaker?
Yeah. So our state, since Republicans took control in 2010, has been on an economic tear. And that wasn't by accident. That was because you saw Republicans come in, lower taxes, get rid of unnecessary, burdensome regulations. We had one of the worst tax climates in the entire South when Republicans took over, and now we have strengthened that to a point where now we're the best tax climate in the South, lowest tax rate among those states that have an income tax. And we've seen the benefits of that. And the reason that is important is that at the end of the day, what we're here to do is to help the people of North Carolina. The best way to help folks is by making sure they've got a job, making sure they've got an ability to go out and earn a living for themselves. I mean, that's what folks want to do. They don't want to, rely on the government. They want to go out and be self-sufficient. And when you have economic growth and pro-business policies, a lot of those other things follow. So infrastructure, we've had historic investments in infrastructure in North Carolina, especially over the last half decade or so. You look at bridges, sewer, water, you name it, across our state, we have invested in infrastructure. Now that's been the result of a great tax policy that while lowering taxes, we've actually increased economic growth. Our tax funds have gone up to the state, even as we have cut taxes across our state. So we've got money to fund those infrastructure projects. We've got money to fund education, to continue to give teachers raises across our state, to make sure that we're taking care of those folks who are critically important to the future of our state. Education is the investment to be made in the future. Our tax policy and our business policies are important now for growth. But long term, we've got to continue to invest in education because it's one of the things that really makes North Carolina appealing with both our public school system, K-12, and the UNC system, which is the best in the world. So we've got to continue to promote those policies, making sure that we're not only being pro-business, we're also looking out for the everyday worker who's out trying to earn a living for their family. We've got to take care of those folks as well, and we've done that in the past, and under any speakership that I have, we're going to continue to promote those conservative pro-growth policies.
Great. So speakership's obviously a very powerful, important position in the state, and you're not the only candidate running. Representative Bell is going to run, it looks like, potentially Jason Sane and Representative Keith Kidwell is also declared for Speaker. What is your message for your fellow Republicans as to why they should elect you as Speaker?
Yeah, well, first of all of those guys, great guys, good friends of mine, great members who do a good job for our caucus. And, our caucus gets a chance to see all of us perform on a daily basis. One of my roles as rules chair is, dealing with all kinds of member issues in our caucus, whether it be an attendance issue or whether it be trying to work out an issue on a bill. And these things, of course, are important to our members for their folks back home. And so I think our members have had a chance to see what I can do. They've had a chance to see me really fill many of the roles that the Speaker's office performs. I typically will preside on House sessions when Speaker Moore is off the floor. I deal with a lot of the same bill movement issues that he deals with, stakeholder processes that we go through. And, our members have had a chance to see those things in action. I am confident in the wisdom of our collective Republican House caucus to make the right decision here at the end of the day. And I can tell you, I feel that they will make the right call, whatever that may be, and we'll continue to move forward and promote conservative pro-growth policies in North Carolina.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you, Representative Destin Hall, Chairman of the House Rules Committee. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.